1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6,
7,
8, 9, 10.
That's harrowing from my end. We are in for a challenging evening.
I feel like I fell into a perfect sequence between you two instead of on Brady, so...
We have a very special guest for today's episode. It's my good friend Derek Muller from the YouTube channel Veritasium, the incredible YouTube channel Veritasium that has like 100 billion subscribers and 200 gajillion video views. And normally at this point, this is a chance for me to introduce another of my YouTube friends to Tim. But in this case, Tim has met Derek. I actually set you guys up on a bit of a blind date, so to speak. Derek, do you want to explain how this all went down?
Yeah, well, I think the family was in Australia traveling around, and we happened to come upon Adelaide. And you were good enough to hook us up with Tim, because I didn't know anyone in Adelaide. And he showed us a great time. So it was a wonderful blind date. Totally would date again.
Wow.
You had the true Brady Adelaide experience too, because my experience of living in Adelaide is pretty much being driven around by Tim for many years as my chauffeur. So that's what you had as well. And Tim, was Derek a good guest?
Yes.
Was he suitably impressed by our magnificent city?
I was able to use the same car booster seat for his kids that I did for you. So that was wonderful.
Oh, right.
And they ate almost as much Maccas as you did as well.
I'm sure he didn't. I forgot. You would have had to use like a baby seat and stuff, wouldn't you, in the car? Did you have one handy, or how did you handle that?
No, I think I sourced them from somewhere. I can't remember where.
I was honestly going to say, I don't know how we did it. I don't think we traveled with them.
Look, this is already turning into a total dad conversation.
I think they came with a rent-a-car. But the rent-a-car near your place was closed, and I went to a different rent-a-car, and...
It was an ordeal.
Yeah.
But I got to say, we had such a good time that my wife was seriously contemplating a move to Adelaide. She thought, Adelaide's a good city. Though I must say, Tim didn't do the most amazing job of selling it. He told us some unsavory things about Adelaide.
Oh, no.
The underbelly, if you will.
They were mainly Brady stories, really, I think. From back in the 90s.
Tim said Adelaide's a strange place where there are lots of serial killers or something like that. Like it's the serial killer capital of Australia.
Adelaide doesn't have a high murder rate. It's a very safe city, but it does have some bizarre murders. Like we don't do many murders, but when we do them weird. There are some very famous and unsavory murder cases from Adelaide.
Salman Rushdie came here in the 80s for a book tour, and he wrote an article that went into one of his books as well about Adelaide being the perfect place to set one of those, murder, mystery, crime kind of sitcoms, which seem to be set in, I don't think there's any English villages left where there hasn't been one set really, but Adelaide is that place in Australia, I guess. It has that sort of feel to it where it's all polite on the surface, but you wonder what's going on, behind Mrs. Jones's roses or something.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a side of Adelaide that Brady doesn't often speak of, but Tim was more than happy to pull back the curtain for us.
Oh, Derek, I will happily tell you Adelaide murder stories. Having worked for the newspaper in Adelaide, I have the inside track on a few of them as well. But we haven't yet sold out and gone True Murder Podcast, but we're saving that for when we get desperate and need to go to that safe ground of podcast land of the True Murder Podcast.
Yeah, well,
for a long time I've liked the idea of inviting Derek onto the Unmade Podcast, but I feel like the time has become necessary because it's like there's been a critical mass of reasons to have you on, Derek, and there are three main things I want to talk to you about or ask you about before we get some ideas for a podcast from you like we do on the show. The first one is, and I think this is amazing, but maybe you don't because you're hyper rational and you'll tell me that probability means whatever. But people who listen to the Unmade Podcast will know Tim was born in quite a obscure Victorian town called Traralgon.
Hang on.
He talks about it all the time.
Who's
But
obscure?
anyway, it's not a famous place. In fact, on a recent episode, I said to Tim, who is the most famous person from Traralgon? And he actually really struggled, and he didn't come up with a Nobel Prize winner that was born in Traralgon. But, he struggled to come up with a famous person born in Traralgon. And here it is, people. Derek Muller was born in Traralgon, Victoria, Australia. I can't believe this town I would never have heard of in my life, and two of my good friends are born there. How is this possible?
It must be something in the water. It's you think this is a town where nothing's going on, but look at us, Nobel Prize winners, me and Tim. I mean, that's a special place.
I didn't actually know this about you until you met with Tim, and afterwards, Tim said to me, Derek was born in Traralgon, like all excited, and I was like, no, I had no idea. I was going to say, how were you born in Traralgon? I understand how you would have been born, but how did it come to be that you were born in Traralgon?
Well, my dad was a civil engineer, and Traralgon was starting up a pulp and paper mill in the early 1980s. So he took a job. My family was South African, and then they moved to Canada. So both my sisters were born in Canada, but my dad happened to take this job in Traralgon, and I popped out there. And so it was just a fortunate accident, I guess, or I feel lucky.
Were you two born in the same hospital? What hospitals were you born in, do you know?
I was born in a hospital that I know was torn down.
Yes.
So if your hospital was also torn down, I think the chances are good that it's the same one.
Yes, they wanted to make sure there were no more of us. That was the Traralgon Central Hospital. My father had many heart attacks in that hospital. I got a lot of memories there.
Oh, man. So my mom tells this story where she says that I was delivered by a veterinarian who also must have been an OB or something.
Wow.
But apparently, I don't know if there were no other doctors around that day or, he was just in from the farm. But apparently that's what happens in Traralgon.
Yeah, in fact, the whole hospital wasn't torn down. Just the dog and cat area was...
And how long were you in Traralgon for, Derek?
So I believe the answer is about 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah. What's interesting, I understand that I had kind of a near-death experience in Traralgon. That we had a shed out the back where my family would just sort of let us, we could run around in the backyard or whatever, play in the shed. And there were these burlap sacks. And my mom says that they found a whole bunch of redbacks. These, very venomous spiders crawling around in those burlap sacks where we were playing.
Ooh.
So, Traralgon almost could have been my end. It could have been a short life.
That sounds like a very non-Australian description of a near-death experience in Australia, though, where they say, I saw a redback spider. I'm lucky to be alive. Redbacks don't kill you by looking at you.
That's true. I mean, I've asked my mom, did you really let us play in the burlap sacks? And she said, well, not after we found the redbacks. So, I don't know. It just seemed like it's a bit close for comfort. I mean, I was 18 months old. The chances, I wouldn't have survived.
Well, I don't know what a burlap sack is.
It's like a weave. It's sort of a rough material. We used to have three-legged races where two people would...
Hessian sort of material.
Maybe that's what you would call it. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have a lot of faith, Derek. You say you probably wouldn't have survived. It doesn't sound like you have a lot of faith in our vet, because
He's good. He would have saved you.
he was a very good veterinarian, and he would have done wonders. Saved my dad's life many times. I believe they do now have a doctor in their new hospital, so that's good.
Derek, have you ever been back to Traralgon?
I have. I actually did a bit of a pilgrimage of sorts back in 2012 or so. I drove down the coast by myself, and then I went inland to Traralgon, and I actually went up to the house where my dad told me where I needed to go. It was on Swallow Grove. I don't know if I remember the number, but I feel like it was 96 or something, but I could be wrong. And I knocked on the door and I said, hey, I spent the first 18 months of my life here. Do you mind if I, come in, look around? And I had a big camera with me too, which was weird. But they let me go into their place and actually film a bit in the backyard, things like that. So, yeah.
Did you go and play in the sax for old time's sake?
I didn't. I think they'd torn down the shed and they'd put up some like large Buddhas or something. So it's changed a lot, you know.
And what did you think of Traralgon seeing it? Like, were you impressed going back and seeing it for the first time through adult eyes?
Yeah, you know, I don't know there was much to see, to be honest. I do love Traralgon, but I didn't really tour the city. I had friends there and I saw the old house and that was it.
Did you go to the Loy Yang power station, which is the only site that Tim ever talks about when he talks about Traralgon?
I have not been to that power station, no.
Wow.
That's the landmark.
No wonder you sound so underwhelmed by your
Oh, I'm sorry, Tim.
pilgrimage. I must say, apart from Loy Yang, the other place you referred to, where your father worked, which was the paper mill, you don't need to find because you can smell it from the entire region. It stinks like nothing else.
Yeah.
And it's not what's in the water, I think, down there. It's what's in the air. But
My dad always used to say that's the smell of money. So, you know.
You should have gone and knocked on the door of the local vet and like gone, I'm back. And All right. That's number one reason. That's the first thing I wanted to ask you about, Derek. The second thing I wanted to ask you about was when you visited Adelaide and Tim took you on the tour and told you all these murder stories, which I didn't ask him to tell you. The one thing I did ask him to do was take you to the Big Rocking Horse at Gamaraka. And we have very recently done an episode at the Big Rocking Horse in Gamaraka, and we were singing its praises and carrying on. And I mean, we gave it a big rap, the Big Rocking Horse. And I thought if anyone is going to be rational and tell it like it is and not get carried away with the hype, it's Derek. And I think in fairness to our civilians, our listeners, we should ask you to give us an impartial review of Adelaide's Big Rocking Horse.
I've got to say, it is a big rocking horse. Like, it holds up, I got to say. It strikes you as one of those unusual things that you're not expecting to see, you know? Like, I don't know, you're walking through the desert and you find a huge fountain or something. It's got that sort of strange, why is this here? And why a rocking horse? You know, you have extraordinary questions. And then what's amazing is getting to climb inside it, and it feels a little bit claustrophobic, but at the same time wondrous, right? It's a magical experience to be able to climb up in a rocking horse. And I was carrying a baby who was probably, I don't know, less than a year old at that time. So that was a challenging task to navigate all the railings and such with a baby and a toddler. And
That's impressive.
yeah, it was nuts. And then, as if the giant rocking horse is not enough, you have the whole animals petting zoo thing that's right there next to it. I've got to say, a highlight for me was the cafe, where I feel like they made some very good food there. It was, hearty, that sort of, comfort food, I think. So I give a big 2 thumbs up to the Big Rocking Horse.
Oh, you made that day.
And you certainly need the comfort after going up that high in that particular structure. I could tell. Look, Derek was a little bit teary at one point, and I had to steady him and encourage him and help him down. In fact, well, he was carrying his baby and I was carrying Derek. That's what it was like, basically.
For those people wondering that if you haven't figured it out from the previous episode, the reason they did build a rocking horse is because it's actually part of a toy factory. So they decided to build an iconic toy, and the rocking horse was the choice. But you're right, when you're up in the sort of the beautiful Adelaide Hills, seeing this huge glaring white and red structure, it's sort of not very in keeping with the scenery. But yeah, it feels very homemade. That's what I like about it. It feels like just a guy made it, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah. And I feel like it's very Australian in that if you're thinking about marketing strategies, in a lot of countries, they have not caught on to the idea of, let's just build like a big thing. Whatever it is we do here, let's build a big one of them at the front, and that's going to bring everyone in. In Australia, that's the standard marketing 101, it feels like.
Yeah.
Everyone who goes to uni, yeah. Big stuff.
In fact, at 96 Swan Grove in Traralgon, they've now built the Big Derek.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Where redback spiders come from all across the country to climb inside.
That's a terrifying thought. Yeah.
All right. All right. Now, the third and final thing I wanted to quickly ask you about, Derek, is we've mentioned that you're born in Australia and you now live in America. I don't know what you identify as, but to me, I've always thought of you as Canadian. Like, to me, Derek is my Canadian friend, despite being a very international person. So, rightly or wrongly, I want to ask you a Canadian question, and that is, why does the Unmade Podcast have so many Canadian listeners? Whenever we get sent messages or competitions or we have prize winners and that, it seems strange how well represented Canadians are, and I have not been able to shed any light on this, and I thought maybe you would, being a man of deep thought.
Wow. I mean, Canadians are fans of sort of high-tier culture, you know? You wouldn't expect just your average American to get into a podcast like this. You need someone who appreciates some sort of real, deep, complex, intricate thought patterns, which I think is what you guys bring to this podcast. So
Yeah.
I could totally see that. Yeah.
I love that while you said that, I was quietly belching off microphone. Just to underscore the point.
I like your explanation better. The best I've been able to come up with is kind of just a bias where there aren't necessarily more Canadians, but Canadians to me have always seemed like people who wear their nationality on their sleeve more than a lot of others. And I thought maybe just like we just see a lot of people identifying as Canadians when they write us letters and things like that. They're like, I'm from Canada. I always found when I was traveling, in my younger days around the world, it was always Canadians that would have a big Canada flag stitched to their backpack and on the back of their jacket. And they're always very, I don't know if it's because they're very proud of Canada or it's just a way of saying, I'm not American. But
yeah.
I've always found...
It's probably a bit of both. When I went back to Australia, when I moved back when I was 21, I put a big Canadian flag on the back of my backpack. So, yeah, it's a thing we do. I don't know why. Yeah. I've got to say, yeah, I do identify as Canadian. I mean, I feel like that's where I grew up, till I was 21 or whatever. So that's most of my formative years, for sure. We're people that likes the flag, and I guess people that likes to get involved with things. Like you're saying when you have competitions and things, right? Like,
yeah, like joiners. Like,
yeah, why not? We've got good spirit. We can get involved and get behind things. I'm trying to think. You don't have any other theories for why this podcast has resonated so well with Canadians? Is it like they have a whole bunch of dreams of doing things, but that they don't quite get around to doing? So they feel like this podcast gives them that outlet to think, I could do that. Or, I've got an idea for something, and then, just talk about it and move on.
That could be it. That could be it too. All right. If anyone listening has a theory as to why lots of Canadians listen, send us an email.
Do you see a lot of reviews in iTunes from Canadians? Is it disproportionate there?
Oh, I've not looked at that. It's a very half-baked observation from me, as you'd expect. I haven't driven down into the data.
There is a wonderful connection
like
with comedy, though. It's well known that Australian comedians and the comedy in Canada. They've got the big we've got the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and they've got it's a Montreal, is that right? Big comedy festival. There's a connection there.
Yeah.
Maybe more than American comedy. There's something about the Canadian satire and a little bit of irony that connects a little bit more with Australian humour. That's been noted before.
Yeah, and I could see both countries having sort of a sibling sort of personality. I guess we're not the biggest, dogs on the block or whatever, but we're still cool countries. So.
And sort of that colonial Commonwealth thing as well. Yeah, okay.
I'm down with the maple syrup, that's for sure. That stuff is gold. I mean, literally, it's gold, but it's beautiful.
Yes.
Any excuse for maple syrup.
I don't have maple syrup in the house. Do you have maple syrup in your house, Derek?
We do. Yeah. We get it from Costco, and it comes from Canada. Absolutely. Yeah. The kids are big into it. So there you go.
You know, we literally, I have to say this, we literally are going to the Pancake Kitchen for dinner soon as this recording is over. That's the plan. That was announced to me. And immediately my mind went, all right, I'm having maple syrup tonight. That was not planned. That is a coincidence.
Does the Pancake Kitchen still have those same maple syrup jugs they had for 100 years, with those silver tops, and you put your thumb down on the thing and it pulls the...
Yeah,
They still got those?
And you know what? They haven't wiped or cleaned those things since our Year 12 breakfast in 1993. So you can still get some out, but it's pretty... You have to sort of jam a hole in the lid and get it out.
Dang.
It's But nevertheless...
Did you take Derek to the Pancake Kitchen when he was in Adelaide?
No, I don't think we did.
I don't think we got the chance. No, but he took us to a French restaurant.
Yeah, well...
Do you remember that, Tim?
Adelaide's known for our... No, I don't remember that. Where did we go?
I believe I had a crepe.
Oh, yeah, the little crepe.
So,
Yeah.
so you did go pancakes?
We actually...
Yeah, well, of a sort. Yeah, very flat.
It was a little French place, crepe place. That's right. We went and had dessert there or something, didn't we? Yeah, that was nice.
So, Tim, while Derek's just gone away to make a cup of coffee because it's the middle of the night where he is in LA,
Yep.
let's do our ad for Storyblocks. So, as everyone knows by now, right, Storyblocks is this online library of video. They've also got audio and pictures. Video is the big deal, though, that you pay a monthly fee for and you can use royalty-free in all your creations, your videos, your podcasts, your newsletters, whatever you're making. It's great to have access to this huge library. I use it every week, getting little bits of audio and video for my own videos on YouTube. So we highly recommend them.
Every week is pretty often, isn't it? You literally couldn't do without it.
Storyblocks have actually got something new going on at the moment that they wanted us to mention, and I think it's really cool. It's called Restock, and basically what they're doing is they've got a whole bunch of their filmmakers, and they've employed a bunch of filmmakers to make a whole bunch of new stock footage to deal with people who are underrepresented in the stock footage. They've created it in response to lots of comments and emails and other contact they've been getting saying there should be more diversity in online stock libraries.
Oh, good stuff.
A big problem is a lot of the stock footage being made around the world at the moment is produced mainly in sort of apparently white Eastern European countries. And Storyblocks have said, well, we're doing something about it. They're rebuilding the stock pipeline, as they put it. If you go to their website, if you go to storyblocks.com/unmade, make sure you use /unmade so Storyblocks know you came from here. Storyblocks.com/unmade, and you can also click through and read about what's happening with this Restock project. They've committed to having 20% of their footage containing people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of colour by 2022. So the clock's ticking on this project to really change the look of stock footage. So good on them for that.
Good stuff. More realistic of the way the world is.
More representative. I wonder if there are plans to have more Canadians as a result as well. I tell you what, today's episode definitely is not representative of people who are not from Traralgon. There's only one of us. It's really good if you go to the Storyblocks site. They actually have like profiles of all these filmmakers who they've commissioned to make all this new footage. So you can sort of it's really interesting getting to know the people who are behind making stock footage. It's really fascinating. I've always wondered who these people are, so it's great that you can go and find out about them.
It is amazing to think that stock footage is deliberate footage. It's just because it's used incidentally, it's not offcuts. It's made, deliberately curated and made, just like a film or a television show or any other piece of content.
and the funny thing is, when I'm using it, there is a kind of weird irony that I'm the filmmaker using this stock footage. It's been made by filmmakers who are way better than me at making films.
Yes.
You're not supposed to agree with that, man. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, no. Sorry.
Anyway, I think I can hear Derek returning from his coffee making, so let's get back to the show. Now, Derek, the main thing we do on the Unmade Podcast is sort of spitball ideas for podcasts that we probably will never make. And I don't want to throw you straight in the deep end. So to kind of warm you up, I'll give you just a half-baked mini idea that I've had for quite a while now. And it's an idea I've always thought that would be a podcast I would make with you if I was to make it.
Wow.
And it's also quite relevant, you being Canadian. So let me tell you about this idea. We'll see what we think of it, and then we'll get a couple of ideas from you. My idea, and I haven't actually given it a name yet, actually. So let me just, on the spot, I'll call it Ice Hockey with Derek. Because I love sport, right? I love almost all sport. I watch so much sport, and even if it's some obscure sport, like if I switch on the TV and I find lawn bowls, I can easily sit and watch hours of lawn bowls and get really into it. But one sport I've never really been able to bond with and enjoy and watch is a sport I know you love. Ice hockey. You know, I've been with you in bars and stuff, and the ice hockey scores will come up on the screens, and you'll be absolutely transfixed. Like, I know how important this is to you, and I feel bad because it's the one sport that I've never really been able to get into. So I thought, wouldn't it be an interesting podcast for you to convert me, for you to immerse me and teach me what I'm missing about ice hockey? And you're the person I thought could do it. Would this be a good podcast, having a non-believer like myself come on, and could you convert me?
Well, I think I could. I think I would want to use some particular methods. I'd want to take you to a game. You've never been to a...
I have. I've been to I haven't been to an NHL game. I've been to an ice hockey game in the UK. But at the top league, which I know is mainly washed up NHL players, but it was a pretty high standard, and I actually did quite enjoy it, to be honest. But I did enjoy going to the game. But I haven't been to an NHL game.
I feel like that would be the difference. You know, even a top tier sort of European league, I feel like you need to be in the arena, you know, in some big hockey city like Toronto or Montreal, or Vancouver will do, but, you know, like Montreal, that's where, you know, it gets real. But just, I find those stadiums electric. Like, I've been to lots of other sports, you know, soccer, football, or whatever, baseball, and, you know, football's pretty good, but there's something about hockey, because they're small arenas, and there's just so much energy. I would be into it. I would totally take you on with converting you to hockey. And I think your Canadian fans would love that, right? You know?
So the reason that you enjoy it so much on TV is because you can map it back onto the experience of being in the arena, you think? That's part of it? That's
part of it. I think another part of it is just that it's such a fast-paced, aggressive, and very skillful game. The plays that you see, you can just really appreciate, and the game just goes so fast that I get a lot of excitement out of it. It's really hard for me to put into words, but it's just, I think, one of the most beautiful games to watch. And also just the pacing. It's just so good. Like, soccer's too slow, basketball's too much inevitable. Like, they're gonna score and then they go the other end and score, and it's just like, you know, it's hard for me to get invested in any one play, but hockey's got the right level.
Scoring in ice hockey to me seems so arbitrary, though, because the goaltender covers so much of the goal that they seem like it seems to me that no matter how good you are, to score you've got to be a bit lucky as well. Like, you can be one-on-one with the goaltender and still they're going to stop it, because like all they've got to do is just like stand there, and it seems so hard to score in ice hockey.
Well, you say it's hard to score, but the games are higher scoring than like football. or soccer, right? So even with all that padding and their huge size and the small net, like, it's still, and I think what you see from the players is incredible ingenuity, because they have to create something, right? Because like, if the goalie's just standing there and you take a shot, like, it's, you know, pretty easy to save it. So that's sort of the remarkable thing, is all the ingenuity and gamesmanship that happens to get him out of place or something like that. Yeah.
Tim, where do you stand on ice hockey?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Oh man.
But I gotta.
You know what's funny is you guys calling it ice hockey, right? We just call it hockey, but
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And yours is field hockey. Yeah, field hockey is field hockey,
is hockey,
and ice hockey is hockey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get the feeling the game didn't originate on the ice, and then they were able to, you know, successfully export it to the grass. I'm not sure that's generally how things work. But can I say one of the things? Help me here then, because I'm equally intrigued by this. Because one of the things that got me to finally click and understand American football NFL is that I stopped thinking about it as football. I stopped thinking Australian rules football. I stopped thinking soccer, and because it's not really that sort of game. I suddenly realised it's a whole other thing, a strategy game, and that's when it came alive for me. So, is the problem in our Brady and my emotional and mental block with hockey? Is it that we're thinking about it as hockey? Is it something else? Is there another game that it's closer to that's our way in?
Yeah, it's tough for me to say because honestly, when I watched AFL, Australian rules football, I find it not that dissimilar from that game, at least in terms of pace and style, right? There's a lot of people moving very energetically and fast and crashing into each other and coming up with some spectacular plays. So to me, I quite liked AFL because I thought that kind of mirrored some of the things that I used to get from hockey. So I guess that'd be my closest point of reference. But
it's 360 and it never stops, and
yeah.
I'll tell you what I think my problem with ice hockey is, because like I get the game. I got into I played it on like Nintendo for a while. Like I played a few seasons, so I know the rules, and I've played it as a video game that I really did like. I think my problem with it, and I know this is like a bit of a cliche thing to say, and Derek's going to roll his eyes like any hockey fan would, and that is, it's hard to watch on TV.
Oh, no.
I can't follow where the puck is. He is rolling his eyes at me. It's hard to follow. And I guess a lot of that is because I haven't watched enough of it. I don't understand the rhythm and the cadence and the movement of the players, which feeds into your ability to follow where the puck is and what's going on in the game. But I can watch a little session of it, and a lot of the time I'm really struggling to figure out where the puck is, what's going on. Like,
yeah, you know what happened in the 1990s? I don't know if you know this story, but it's a true story. You know about it. That the Fox TV channel started putting a little fuzzy blue dot like around the puck, so that when you're at home,
a tracker.
Yeah, you could actually see it. I guess they had like a little GPS thing in the puck or whatever, and then
didn't they also have like a line behind it, like a streak, so it looked like a comet or a meteor or something?
When someone passed it, there would be a little blue streak behind it, and then when you shot it, the thing would turn red, so you could watch the puck. So obviously, I mean, your concern has been a common one, and one particularly that the Americans decided was worth solving with this technology solution. But the Canadians all thought, what a bunch of idiots, they can't follow the puck in a game of hockey. Like, yeah.
Did they also introduce controllers so you could control the players? Because that was great fun, wasn't it, Brady, when we used to do that? And is that the one where the guy would say face off? Is that a face off? Is that ice hockey?
That sounds like a video game. Is that a video game?
It may have been.
There was like NHL 95 is kind of like, yeah.
EA Sports one's the one I got into, and I played as the Detroit Red Wings, and and in the game I had, you could change the names of your players, and I changed the player up forward to Brady Harron, and I just always let him score the goals. Even no matter what happened, it was always passed to Brady Harron and let him score the goals. So at the end of the season, when they had the league table of the top goal scorer in the league, Brady Harron was topped by about like 200 goals. So
you're not competitive then, are you, Brady?
No, I don't know.
I'm not sure they're officially recognised, Brady, but anyway, it's a nice.
No, I don't think they are. I don't think they are officially recognised records.
Can I have one more question for Derek on this though? This is an interesting podcast which we can get back to the essence of in a minute. But Derek, one question: Do you face paint? Do you paint your face?
No.
Okay.
I'm not much of a joiner, to be honest. I don't get too fired up about most things. So yeah, painting your face that'd be going a long way. I think that like English football takes it way too far, and the fact that there's people dying in the stands sometimes when some club hates some other club that much. I mean, that's for me, it's not that level of fandom. Having said that, when the Canucks went to the final in 2012, I flew back from Australia to Canada to be there for the final. And it went to Game 7, and I was in Vancouver for that game, which, to our everlasting shame, we lost. And
gosh.
Yeah, what a night!
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
We got up 3-1 in that series, if I can just say, against Boston, and lost it 4-3. Brutal, absolutely brutal.
Nah, I'm sorry. Do you play?
I play poorly. Not as well as any Canadian should, but better than most Australians. So, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I've got a stick in the house now, and I've been knocking the ball around with the kids. So, yeah, we're starting to get it going.
You play ice hockey. You're on the Unmade Podcast. You are a Canadian. I think that's right. I can understand why you identify.
You are the
Checks out.
You even put the flag on your backpack. Anyway, enough of this. This has gone way too long on my idea.
What was the, hang on? What was the idea to talk about ice hockey?
That
for
we'd
a
have
few
a
minutes with
podcast
Derek?
where I would convert him to an ice hockey lover.
Derek explains. Yeah.
Honestly,
Since when do you actually care what the idea is, Tim? It's just an excuse to talk about ice hockey.
That's one episode. That's not
No, because it would be a different. There would be a different, and you'd have guests on and other people who need converting. You could really. It would be basically. It's the ice hockey podcast for people who don't understand ice hockey.
Okay.
My
It's
concern,
like a idiot's guide, sort of.
yeah, I just don't know that like a podcast is the right medium for converting people to ice hockey. I feel like it's a thing that is very experiential. I think the thing I'm most excited about is if you wanted to come to a game with me, I would be delighted. So let's make that happen.
Well, I'm not going to travel across the world to go to an ice hockey game with you because I know that always ends up as a bad experience after your finals experience, your Stanley Cup experience. So I don't want to travel all that way and then see your team lose. Did you cry when you lost Game 7?
Honestly,
Did you cry?
I did not cry. I did not. But Vancouver has a habit of rioting, win or lose. Really, it's a rioting kind of town. So there was a riot that night. Yeah. I didn't get in.
I wasn't. After your football comment, I was going to mention that, and I thought I'd be polite.
Look,
but
I didn't partake of the riot, but there was a riot that was had that night. So
Partake of the riot.
yeah, I didn't partake of the riot. That could be the name of the podcast.
I just love two people with baseball bats going, "Shall we partake? Let's," and then running in swings.
No, you go first. No, you smash the windscreen. No, I insist.
it'd be a very, very Canadian way to riot. Yeah.
Oh, that's gold.
All right, Derek. Let's hear your first idea for a podcast.
Okay, my first podcast idea, and I think I'm gonna need you guys to workshop a title with me. But the core concept of the podcast is, well, it's kind of around hypochondria. So the idea that whatever symptoms you're feeling are actually a symptom of some deep, horrible disease. So every podcast could be a different disease. And the symptoms would be kind of a little bit strange, but also not severe. Like, I've got an itchy back of the left knee or something.
Right.
But then it turns out to be like this horrible condition. I don't know why I came up with this as a podcast idea.
Is it kind of like a diagnosis, but then you always go the worst case scenario?
It's basically that. It's basically like, you talk through the symptoms so people can listen and think like, oh yeah, my shin has been hurting recently, and then at the end you turn out, you got a tumor or something. Like it's
That's what I was going to suggest. It should be called. It should be called "It Might Be a Tumor," like from Kindergarten Cop.
It's not a tumor. Yeah,
It's not a tumor. It's not a tumor at all. Yeah. Okay. So
that's what I've brought to you.
So what does an episode look like? Okay, today our guest is Tim Hine. Tim, what have you got? And Tim will say, oh, I've had a weird tingling in my ear. And then the two experts will talk through all the things it could be.
Yes.
With the finale that this is the worst thing it could possibly be.
This sounds like a way better podcast idea than I was pitching you. No, but I like this.
This is the most irresponsible podcast in history.
Another name for this podcast is Dr. Google.
Yeah.
I was thinking, it's the kind of thing that would get a lot of people listening because you'd want to know.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I've had that symptom. Yeah, what could it be? In a sense, you could think of it as like a public service podcast that you're getting medical information out there into the wider public. You could have earlier diagnoses of things where they say, "Oh yeah, my aunt she had a sore foot or whatever it is." And
you're right. This is a really good idea. You're right. It does serve a public service in a strange way, although it will put the fear of God into many people. It also does serve, and it will make people get things checked. It also, I think, would be successful because another thing people like, even if they haven't got the symptoms, people just love hearing about other people's misfortune. So hearing about like terrible diseases and things that can go wrong that you haven't got, people do take like a strange and macabre pleasure in that. Like, I think this hypochondriac podcast is really good.
Yeah.
Tim, are you a hypochondriac?
I think I am. I've never thought about it before, but I think I am.
I kind of think you are a bit, because because I do often get texts from you saying, I guess this is also part of being like a dad,
Yes.
a family, you have a new level of responsibility. But I do often get messages and texts from you saying, you know, one of the family's sick, we're all going and getting tested, and it's semi-regular that I'll get a message from you that there's like a health scare and there's concern and someone's going to the doctor. Whereas like I think I've been to the number of times I've been to the doctor in my life you could count on one hand. Like, I'm just, anything wrong with me, I'm just like, it'll go away, and then eventually it does. I know that's bad, by the way. I know that's not how you should live your life.
Wow. It sounds like if there's anyone who needs the Hypochondriac podcast, it's you, Brady.
Yeah.
You need this.
Yeah.
It could save your life one day. I've gone to the doctor 5 times, and then you're listening to our podcast, and you're like, oh yeah, my left eye has been twitching, and that could be
for 3 years. Yeah.
My yeah. So I've just got a vision of you with your arm half hanging off, Brady, like the knight in Monty Python.
It'll get better, and it always does. It always gets better in the end.
I think my hypochondria is less about, is there something wrong with me, and more a case of, have I got something that could cause damage to someone else? Now, maybe that's COVID-19, but because you have children and they go to school and, you know, you just catch everything and come home. My wife works in aged care, so there's also that sense of she's in trouble if she feels anything and goes to work, you know. And because I'm where I'm people too, so there's always that sense of, oh, I better get checked out. It's like, you'll be fine. It's like, it's not about me. If I get sick, that's cool. That's a few days with books and Netflix on a warm couch. You know what I mean? But it's that sense of, I think I'm hypochondriac, overcautious about the impact on other people, which has just made my hypochondria just sound like I should be given, a Nobel Peace Prize for virtuous outliving. But
I'm not a hypochondriac. I'm a hero. I'm a humanitarian.
It's a little bit like Mother Teresa, really. It's.
I've always wondered if your like greater sensitivity to this area may have been because you have like such a nurturing mother, and you're an only child. I thought maybe you were so nurtured as a child, maybe that you carry that through into adulthood, and you're just conscious if something's sick, I need to be made better. Whereas, when you're from the streets like me,
I was wondering that too last night when my mum was feeding me, and.
What are you, Derek? What are you? Are you like are you more the Brady? Tough it out, or the Tim? Let's get this checked. School of thought.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like everyone has a bit of hypochondria in them, and I'm no exception. I feel like, when I went to the Head and Shoulders head office because we were doing a sponsor video, but it's like as they start to talk about
hashtag ad.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a hashtag ad. Sorry about that, but
Yeah.
But like they start to talk about this fungus that's living in your hair and stuff, and it's just. You just notice everyone just starting to itch a little bit. And it's just like that subconscious thing that they're just putting those ideas in your head. I don't know.
Why did you bring that up? That's not helpful.
Old fungus head.
No.
Well, it's caused by fungus. So anyway.
Tim Hine has left the call and gone to his doctor to be checked for hair fungus.
Just shaving my head as I sit.
I have to admit, like, obviously when, the COVID thing first became a really big deal, like every single niggle in your body you became absolutely convinced was coronavirus. You would have you would stub your toe and be convinced you just caught coronavirus and stuff. Mm-hmm. We've become a little bit desensitized to it now, I think. But yeah, I think we've all got a bit of that. So
I projected onto the dog as well. Like, our dog's a little bit lame. Brooklyn's got like a sore leg at the moment, but he's also acting a bit strange where he just stares off into space for long periods of time. And I just find myself projecting all sorts of, human issues onto... Maybe he's worried about this, Maybe he's worried.
Sounds like hair fungus to me. Has he got dandruff?
Maybe he needs counselling. Maybe...
Derek, that is a very good first idea. I'm very impressed. But you do have to have 2 ideas. I don't know why. That's just some arbitrary requirement. So what's your second podcast idea? Let's see if it's as good as the first.
Okay, so the second podcast idea is famous last words. So every episode takes on a famous person and the last things that they said.
This is
Nice.
This is so my wheelhouse, because people who know me know that I spend a lot of time on the internet reading about how famous people die. Like I will spend hours going through Wikipedia, just calling up a famous person's page and just scrolling straight down to death, cause of death. And very often it will deal with their last words. So I think this is
That's just people in Adelaide.
Derek's last words were, "Mummy, mummy, what's this funny spider?"
It could have been. I wonder with some of these famous last words if these are all real, or whether how much they're made up and how much are actually real.
Yeah, apocryphal ones.
I'm looking at a site here that says Richard Feynman, famous physicist, that his last words were, "This dying is boring." There you go. He was ready for it. There was another guy who was a scientist, Michelson, who measured speed of light in a famous experiment, and he was writing in his log that he was measuring the velocity of light made at the Irvine Ranch near Santa Ana, California, during the period of September 1929 to, and then it's blank. So I don't know if he was actually writing as he died, but that's what it seems like.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it just feels like there's all these really interesting circumstances around death and the things that people are thinking in those last moments that are sort of very insightful into thinking about life as a whole, I think.
And other times they're just
funny.
They can sometimes be funny, or or there's that famous guy who said, "I promise you this water is safe to drink," and he drank it and he died from it. Einstein's last words famously were in German to a nurse who didn't speak German, so no one knows what Einstein's last words were. Yeah. So, Tim, what do you know any good famous last words?
What are the...
It is finished.
It is finished. They're pretty good, aren't they? Yeah, they resonate. Yeah. The famous ones from an Australian point of view is the bushranger called Ned Kelly, and his famous words were, "Such is life." This is just as he was about to be hung in the old Melbourne jail.
Yeah.
Do you think people know what a bushranger is? Do I need to explain a bushranger?
An outlaw.
Like a bandit. Outlaw.
Yeah.
Like Billy the Kid.
It's a good name, bushranger, isn't it, really? But
it is a good name.
Technically, you can't get hung for ranging around the bush. But I guess if you stick up people, and he killed a few police. But yeah, such is life. So a lot of people get that as a tattoo. It's sort of an outlaw tattoo. It's not as good as It Is Finished, though.
Do you ever think about your own last words? Do you ever wonder, I wonder what my last words will be?
I don't personally, no.
Well, I'm putting it to you now. What would you like your last words to be?
Ooh, geez, Brady. I feel like I need the rest, the second half of my life to figure that out.
Do you ever think about your last tweet? Do you ever do a tweet and think, oh my goodness, if I went out and died now, like in a car crash or got hit by a bus, that's the last thing I ever said that people will look at and talk about, and then think, oh, I better delete that tweet because it's a bit naff?
Well, I 100% think about, well, maybe that video is my last. I don't know if you ever think of that, but it's just one of those things where at some point one of these videos is going to be the last, and chances are, well, I don't know. Will I have planned it, or will it just be something that happens? I mean,
yeah.
Do you think about it? I mean, you've got such a cadence with videos. You probably have like 50 more in the pipeline that could post posthumously.
I have to admit, I do sometimes think, I wonder what my last tweet will be, because when someone dies, I always go to Twitter and look at what their last tweet was. It's just a macabre fascination I have. So I think, people will probably do the same to me. I wonder what my last tweet will be. I've never done it with a video, which is far more significant and important, the videos you post than just some tweet.
All right, here's your last tweet, Derek, on...
I've been in a bit of a battle with anyway, go ahead. But is this tweet and reply?
Well, it is a reply, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Oh, no.
It looks like it's the 47th reply. Is this one conversation?
As I said, I'm in a bit of a thing right now. So, anyway, what does it say?
Is your last tweet going to be, nah, you are?
It's entirely possible the way this is going. Yeah.
Below it, and I'm quoting now from the great Derek Muller. Below is the professor's argument for why I'm wrong about going faster than the wind downwind. Bonus points for spotting the flaw in his explanation. Well,
I think you've nailed your colours to the mast there, Derek.
Do you know what's happened, Brady? Is that a physics professor from UCLA essentially sent me an email and said, "You're wrong."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, if you think I'm wrong, let's have a bet for $10,000."
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
Yeah.
He thinks he's right, I think I'm right, and there's $10,000 on the line.
Right.
Yeah.
wow.
Well, you Hollywood, LA YouTubers can obviously afford to have $10,000 bets.
You know how we said that before that your famous last words can become mythic and they can become a little adapted and they take on a life of their own. And I can just see this one here taking on a mythical status. If, God forbid, this is your last ever tweet to say that, oh, did you hear about Derek Muller? His last words were, below is why I'm wrong.
What's Brady's current last tweet?
Oh, I'll tell you Tim's first. Tim's is spent the weekend listening to the various albums of Neil Finn after a long break. My goodness, She Goes On is a beautiful song. Gorgeous. That's such a typical Tim tweet. That would be somehow appropriate.
That's not bad. I would take that one.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and that obviously that would then have to be the song we played at Tim's funeral because of that.
She goes on. Yeah. It's actually about a lady dying.
Yeah, my last tweet is bravo to the remote operator of the camera at the base of the Scotland goal net. Because yes, there was this amazing goal scored at the Euros last night, and the goalkeeper was off his line and went running backwards to try to save the ball and couldn't, and then fell into the net, tumbled into the net, and got stuck in it. And that little camera that they have based in the net at the bottom corner of the net was being controlled and had this amazing pan following the ball into the net and then panned back onto the goalkeeper as he got tangled in the net. And it was a magnificent piece of camera control. I was as someone who always stuffs up camera moves, I was incredibly jealous. So
and we'd have to play that goal at your funeral then.
You would.
I can write a eulogy around that. That's for sure. As someone who became famous because of his use of the camera, it was so typical that in the end his final words were affirming and praising the technical abilities of another camera person. What a man.
I like that. In terms of a podcast idea, I mean, this is safe. Good idea. Probably not quite as original and clever as Hypochondria, because there are whole websites dedicated to famous last words. But I still think it would be a really good listen every week, and you never know where the conversation's going to go, because it becomes, a bit biographical about the person who died and how they died, and, it's really just a jumping off point for some fun conversations. So again, I'm going to have to give a big thumbs up to that as a podcast idea.
Well, I'm glad. I didn't want to come on the show and throw up some duds as a Traralgonite Canadian who's been to Adelaide,
Who was that? Was it FDR who died in office? And his last words are quite well documented. I was reading about his death just the other day. Let me look up FDR's death, because he was having his portrait painted the day he died. Here, FDR's last words were, "I have a terrific headache." He then slumped forward in his chair, unconscious, and was carried to his bedroom.
Hey.
Can I say, Derek, I think you may have pioneered, unintentionally, a new innovative form of podcast, though. We come on here and we feel the need to rabbit on for an hour with, sure, nuggets of gold every minute, but we do feel like it needs to go for about an hour. I'm wondering about this, if this podcast idea literally could last 3 seconds. You put it on and you hear it, "Die, my dear darling, that's the last thing I'll do. And we'll see you next week." And that's it. And that's the podcast. It's just the briefest, shortest podcast ever made. I like it.
Or what about as a piece of art, an art installation, a piece of audio that is just the reading of people's last words, like for hours. You just collect as many as you can and then just read them and then like play them in a dark room at the Tate Modern or something.
Yeah. No, that stuff's always happening in art museums. I think that you guys have great ideas. Yeah.
That would be... and you just go and sit in the room in a soft chair and you just spend as many hours as you want bathing in the last words of your fellow humans.
Apparently, Steve Jobs' last words, "Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow."
Mm.
Well, he was listening to some of Tim's ideas on the Unmade Podcast. There is something deeply fascinating about it. I'm looking some up. Hang on. The much disputed last words of Beethoven. Friends applaud. The comedy is over. That sounds apocryphal to me.
Derek, while Brady looks those up, do you remember your first words?
I have no clue. I think, I was a third child, and I think by that point, I don't know, do you have 3, Tim?
2.
You got 2, yeah. Well, anyway, we have 3, and by the time you get to the third, it's, who knows. So I'm pretty sure that's how my parents felt about me. So, yeah, I don't think they've saved that.
Yeah.
Are there any photographs of you at all as a child? Or did they...
Yeah, it was like... Yeah, on the shelf, it was like, oh yeah, these 7 albums are your older sister, and then this is the middle child, like 3 albums, and then like, oh yeah, I think there's a few pictures of you in the back of that one, and that was it.
Derek lived in a sack in the backyard, so you know what his childhood was like. So, I am. So I was the first child, and my baby book, baby album, where like Mum has handwritten about my baby years, is so thorough. It's like every day is documented. It's incredible. It's like this incredible tome. And then she bought the same thing for my sister, and my sister is like just full of blank pages and gaps, and it's like just not kept. It's like a running joke in our family that I've got like this incredible document, and my sister, nothing. I think my first 2 words were poo and Susie.
Whoa.
And Susie was some girl whose name I liked saying.
Susie's, that sounds like a pretty complicated one. So,
yeah.
hats off to you, Brady.
Thank you.
What about you, Tim? You got your first words. Do you know what they were?
I have no idea. No. I'm sure they are written. My mum's the sort of person who would not necessarily document them. She wasn't sort of as scholastic as your mum, Brady, but she took a lot of photos and remembered that stuff. I think like she's still got my teeth and hair and, stuff like that around the place. Not around the place as in her lounge room, but,
She's got a necklace of Tim's teeth. Nostradamus' last words, "Tomorrow at sunrise, I shall no longer be here." I don't believe that. I think that's apocryphal.
Yeah, that's BS. Yeah.
Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
"I should have switched from scotch to martinis."
I just found a different Humphrey Bogart one before. See, that's how we know they're apocryphal. There was a different one there about "Go get help, kid" or something.
Anyway, Derek, thank you so much for your ideas and your time, your Canadian expertise, your hockey knowledge, your fair review of The Big Rocking Horse.
Hey, anytime.
And we have now had 2 people born in Traralgon on the podcast.
Huge.
At the same time.
I never thought I would say that. Who would have thought? I never thought I'd be on a show outnumbered by people from Traralgon. It's amazing.
The world deals you strange cards, isn't it, Brady?
And Derek, have you got anything going on we should tell people about? Obviously, go and watch Veritasium videos. But we don't really need to tell people that, though, because everyone in the world already watches Veritasium, judging by your viewing figures. But
yes,
we will link to Veritasium in the show notes if you want to go and check out. And we'll also link to Derek's Twitter, so you can go and find out how his spat is going with his with professors over his latest video.
Yeah, that's the big thing in my life right now.
Don't engage, man. Don't engage with that stuff.
Are you kidding me? A physics professor says my physics is wrong. That is the perfect time to engage.
Let me tell you this. I did a video about the Monty Hall problem, and I had a professor from Berkeley email and say that I'm wrong and switching doesn't improve your odds. And that's the Monty Hall problem, which is like the most done to death problem of all. Like there's not even any doubt left anymore.
But aren't you doing a public service if you then take on that professor and take him down?
I don't.
Because if there is a math professor at Berkeley who is going around and can't solve the Monty Hall problem, like I pledge allegiance to the truth. And when a physics professor comes at me and says, your physics is wrong, I have the correct physics, I feel a duty, like I owe something to the truth.
I hear you, right? I hear you that it's a physics professor. But surely you, like me, must get 100 comments and messages and emails a day from people telling you you're wrong, when probably you're not. So
if he didn't live 15 minutes from my house, I don't know. It's the fact that he's right here.
Yeah. And it's a fun way to shine a bit more light on the video too, which is always just nice too. Let me tell you, the only thing I ever reply to, because obviously I get lots of messages and emails, from people who've, solved the Riemann hypothesis or think they have solved the Collatz conjecture. The only thing I ever reply to, because I think it's fun, is I often get messages from people saying that the 4-color map theorem proof doesn't work, which obviously it does because it's been proven, by brute force. But they'll then send me a map that they've colored that requires 5 colors, and they'll attach it to their email, like saying, look, and here's an example. And always what's happened is they've made some mistake, and if they'd coloured that one blue and that one red instead, they could have got away with 4 colours. And usually what I'll do is I'll just take their map into Photoshop and just recolour it with 4 colours and just email it back to them as a reply. It's my favourite thing to do. And you'll always get this embarrassed reply back going, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe I didn't see that.
Oh, wow.
Just colouring in maps.
That is the strangest type of email to respond to. One that requires you to open Photoshop and fix up their map and figure out which color should be where. I mean, it just sounds like you're asking for puzzles.
Well, no, because it's always easy. It never requires much thought, and it only takes a minute or two. It's not like I have to sit there and solve the problem. You immediately see what they've done, and they just have become blind to it. Because I've done the same thing. I understand the problem, but I don't know. I think there's something funny about replying with just a coloured-in map and no words. I just think it's a funny reply, so there you go. That's not an invitation to send me maps.
He's going to stop doing it from now on.
For 2 things. Firstly, like at least some of our listeners, having now Googled the Monty Hall problem, I know what you're talking about. Secondly, I want to say, as someone who's spoken a little bit in America and has been introduced before speaking, I know that the word professor is more loosely used there than it is in other contexts. And being a professor of something in America means you're kind of lecturing that thing. Being a professor in Australia is something you get after 30 years of serious scholarship and publishing. So maybe a professor on Twitter may or may not be. I mean, sure, there's kind of, student, tutor, professor, YouTuber, but I'm just saying.
Your one you're having your spat with is a proper professor, though.
He is a proper professor, yeah.
Yeah. Is this going to be one of those debates, though, where it just comes down to, semantics and you're both right, depending on your context? That's how these things often get resolved.
What's funny is that I think he's just 100% wrong. Okay. I was worried because I'd made this bet and I went into his office to see his presentation. But he 100% thinks that what I'm claiming is impossible, and I 100% think that his theoretical analysis is just wrong. So I think we're going to have some nice resolution to this.
Wouldn't it be a good podcast would be famous bets in history? Because there've been bets.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You occasionally get those bets, don't you, that get resolved years later. And
I kind of like bets in general. I think if we had more disagreements where people had to put up money for their side, we would get to the truth a lot faster. I would love that to just be more of an accepted thing in our society. We disagree. Okay, well, instead of having this stupid battle about it, let's put some money on it and let's define what the outcome is.
Imagine if that was a feature in Twitter, when 2 people disagreed on Twitter and were having a fight, you had to put down some money in escrow that Twitter holds, and then people would be a lot more careful about what they said.
We should make a new app. That's what this is.
Yeah.
It's a new app.
Put your money where your mouth is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Get working on that, people.
Well, you both agree, so there's nothing I can do here. So
no,
you both agree it's a good idea. So
do you want to place a bet on who makes the app first out of me and Derek?
I'll put $25,000 on it being Derek.
I'll take it.
Is there anything else you think we should do?
Nah, that's a good episode. We did a fair bit.
The only thing is, I do think this, because this was episode 87, and 87 is the devil's number of Australian cricket. because it's 13 runs short of 100. People are always superstitious when they're on 87 runs. I felt like I had a whole idea about a podcast involving the devil, things that are named after the devil.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe we'll have to do that in episode 88.
Well, you could do that and say, "Whew, you weren't game to do it in 87, or you're glad to get off 87 or something."
Or something. Or now we've got this, I could tag this on the end. Because then they could have done Devil's Elbow.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You know I love Devil's Elbow.
It's gone, man. You got to let it go. Well, it's up there, but it's like superseded.
You can still drive around Devil's Elbow, can't you? You just have to come off the freeway to do it.
I don't know if you can drive. You can certainly ride. I've ridden on it because it's like a bike track.
You've ridden a bike around Devil's Elbow?
Yep.
Oh, man. You're my hero.